I am Tracy Themes, co-founder of Sophia Financial Group and Sophia Wealth Academy with my business partner, Kamal Basra. We are a full-service financial planning and investment management firm located on Vancouver, BC's west side. Since we opened, we've been dedicated to delivering excellence in professional, holistic investment management and creating a platform for financial inclusion, education, and inspiration. We believe that money is power, the power to create personal peace of mind and the power to make the world a better place. Wise Money Talks is our online education program with the objective to help you gain control over all aspects of your relationship with money. We want you to be the boss of your money and not the other way around. Money, as I'm sure you've learned, is never just about the money. This season in particular, our offerings are dedicated to building resilience and confidence so you can move forward in your financial life with strength and conviction. I'm so appreciative of our incredible speakers who are so willingly able to share their time and energy and wisdom with us. They bring new ideas and considerable life experience to their teachings. Thank you from both Kamal and I. I'm also grateful to our webinar hosting and marketing teams for managing all those backstage details and everything that goes into presenting these wonderful speakers and their important life-changing messages. Again, thank you. And so for now, I will sign off, leaving you in their capable hands. Have fun, everybody. And remember, we're here if you need us.
Thanks, Tracy. Oh, sorry. Before we get started with today's webinar featuring Marlene Delange, we have a few quick notes to cover. We will be, we will be recording this webinar and you will have access to this talk along with other webinars on our YouTube page. We will be sending out the link to this session as well as information on other upcoming events later this week to everyone who registered for Wise Money Talks. We have set time aside at the end of this webinar for you to ask Marlene any questions or share personal insights. Do not use the chat function for questions, but rather the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. At the end of today's presentation, you will also be asked to complete a short survey, basically less than a minute. Your feedback is always appreciated as it helps us to fine-tune our sessions as we move forward. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Marlene Delange. She will be guiding us through the process of creating a resume that is sure to impress. I have known and worked with Marlene for several years and have personally benefited from her passion and her expertise in this area. She is truly gifted when it comes to making you and the work that you do stand out on paper and with potential employers. Marlene, who is the founder and principal of Career Solutions, consults with organizations that want to stay ahead of the curve with progressive human resource practices. As a faculty member at BCIT, Marlene also offers business communication skills within technical professional training programs. From her experience in HR and as an educator, Marlene has seen over 10,000 resumes in the last 5 years alone and is eager to share her insights on how to leverage your value within your targeted job market. Marlene has a master's degree in educational psychology, a certificate in human resources, an undergraduate degree in business administration, as well as certifications in numerous psychometric tools. Without further ado, please welcome Marlene Delange. Over to you, Marlene.
Thank you so much, Joanne. What a lovely introduction. And hello to everyone. My goal tonight is to provide you with a lot of practical tips. Before we get started, I'd like to understand who is here. So if you would be willing to interact with this poll, that would be wonderful. So I'm wondering if some of you might be a new grad looking for work. So perhaps you've just done some training or education, or perhaps you're not working right now, but looking for your next opportunity. Or perhaps you are working and also looking for your next opportunity. Or maybe you're the fourth category, which is that these three things don't really speak to me. My story is different. So if you would be able to respond to that, it would help me understand who's here tonight. Okay, so thank you very much. I now see that we have a wide range of group or a range of people, mostly those sitting into the I'm not working and looking for my next great opportunity, as well as people who are itchy and looking for their next thing. So they're employed and perhaps not feeling the love within their current role or their current organization, and another person in another category. My goal tonight is to address anyone who is in their particular scenario. And my goal is to provide you with some really hands-on practical tips that you can walk away with. So let's look at what our goals are for this evening. So our session is going to be giving you some of these practical tools. So my goal is to give you a strategic approach to developing a standout resume, one that will open new career doors and help you to attain your financial goals. Because when you're doing what you know and do and love and do it in the right place, money starts to flow. So that is a really great goal that I have for you. I want to give you 3 critical resume principles that will assist anyone, no matter whether you're starting your career, trying to advance your career, looking for new role, and no matter what phase you're in. I'm going to give you 3 practical guidelines for how to address your resume, as well as any other practical techniques that I would come to mind as I come through or work through this session. There will be Q&A because I didn't want to load you with 1,000 slides and talk ad nauseum at things that didn't really address my audience. So what you experienced tonight is really important. Okay, so if you've ever attended a session with me, you know I love stats. So here's one that I thought was really interesting, is that there's 1.5 billion hits on Google on resume tips. 98% of job seekers and resumes are eliminated. And 2 to 3% of people or job seekers get interviews. So those are kind of interesting statistics. And where I wanted to flow from this was that with so many hits and so much information about resumes, why, when I'm in the role of recruitment, why am I still getting so many resumes that are not effective? So this was very interesting to me, and I'm always trying to look at those things. Now, you probably are quite savvy and know that we do not spend a lot of time on your resume on the first go. So this is with my tough HR hat on. I also have a very kind hat. So we wear both of those roles. But the first time I look at your resume, and most recruiters, is we spend between 8 and 10 seconds. I'm guessing that's not a surprise to you. In those 8 to 10 seconds, I'm probably doing everything I can to get rid of you. And that's pretty easy because let's face it, people are not always focused when they're writing their resume. They don't know what to do always, or there'll be a whole number of reasons. But the first go is to get rid of all of those individuals who really are not, their heart isn't in it, or they didn't do some, I'll call it Q&A, so quality analysis assurance on their resume, didn't go through and notice their typos. So I can get rid of quite a few people just with that. Once I've got those remaining resumes though, I treat them golden. So I am really focused on you then, and no longer are 8 to 10 seconds the time I spend much longer on it. But nevertheless, I want to help you in those 8 to 10 seconds is get more quickly into the yes pile. So I think about this a lot, and I'm teaching these types of workshops a lot because I'm very passionate about good candidates not getting missed. So one of the problems with that 8 to 10 seconds is that potentially some really great candidates are missed. We don't want that to happen. I'm pretty sure that someone in this group tonight, in fact, all of you are those individuals. I've also seen that people are doing some good things with their resumes. So let me be sure to say that this is not meaning that I'm seeing really bad resumes and there's only a few good ones. It's just, I'm noticing a trend towards slightly better ones, but I notice some critical things that people are missing. So hence why I'm gonna be talking about those things tonight. One thing to keep in mind about writing a resume is that you're communicating your brand. Now, what is a brand? A brand is a totality of impressions about you. They're communicated by you every day. They are your efforts, your skills, your experiences, your education, your traits, how you approach your work. It's how you show up in the world. So your brand is living within you, and you are living it, and it is being communicated in a variety of ways. The resume is one of those things that is communicating your brand. It's just the one thing I'm going to talk about tonight. I only have so much time, so I wanted to keep things fairly focused. A brand is something that exists in the minds of others. So this is something that you want to be starting to shape and form, and you can do that with your resume. So that's what I wanted to really talk about, was to make sure you understand that this document is a brand. Your document is also a story. It is your story. It is a story based on data. What you did, where, when, how, what education. So that's why I call it a data document. But we put together that data to try and figure out, who is this person? And we come up with what I call a narrative, a narrative. And that narrative is what I want you also to be thinking about as you write your resume. So tonight I'm going to give you some tips, and I'm going to speak a bit high level. I'm going to give you some examples, because if I don't do that, you might feel you weren't served tonight. But I want to get away from the niggly details. They are important, but I find some resume writers, job seekers, are over focusing on some of the niggly stuff and not seeing that broader picture. So let me go through what I hope to present tonight. And if I could see the next slide, I want to get you preparing a little listening tool. So just quickly, if you have a piece of paper, what I'd like you to do is grab that piece of paper and create 4 squares or 4 quadrants. And within those 4 quadrants, I'm going to be delivering some content, as well as having you do some activities in some of these. I just thought it was far more interactive than me just talking at you, because I don't like doing that. I really wish I was in front of you to see your faces, but we are in the Zoom environment, and that is not the case. So in your upper left corner, could you please write in quadrant 1, main message? Over on the right, quadrant 2, please write targeted. In the bottom left, please write accomplishment. And over in, the bottom left, accomplished, and the bottom right, pretty. That is going to be my main points tonight. And I'm going to offer you some suggestions and ideas of what you could do for each of these main points in your resume. Let me cover now the main message. I believe when you walk away from any learning and somebody said to you, "What did you learn tonight?" you can easily state what that was. So my main message to you is that I would like you in your resume to show how you are aligned with that position and that organization, and show the impact that you have had in your past. That's going to be part of the story that you are creating and the narrative that is being communicated in your resume. Now, how do you do that? There are 3 golden rules for writing your resume, and that's what I want to focus on. So you want to be aligned and impact, main message. 3 ways of doing that: targeted, accomplished, and what I call pretty. So we'll go through each of those, but if you, again, have to remember what it is that Marlene was really advocating tonight, it's that you're aligned and you show impact. How? Targeted, accomplished, and pretty. Let's deal with the first bullet point of targeting. How do we target our resume? Now, I believe you are getting this type of information in other workshops that you've attended, but I'm not seeing it in all the resumes that I'm receiving. So the first consideration is that you need to look at that job ad and you need to go deeper with that. You need to go into the organization, look up in LinkedIn who might be working in that unit, what might be their pain points. And once you've done that analysis, you will then look at yourself to say, how do I meet that? So I'm a visual learner. I put up a Venn diagram. So what do they want? What do I have? What's that overlap? And that's what you want to communicate in your brand. So your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn, and your interview. You want to showcase, I get you. So just like tonight, if I was sharing about my sourdough excitement, you'd say, excuse me, they don't get me. This resume or this workshop promised me this, and I'm getting that. Waste of time. So you know this very well because you're also bumping out of websites very quickly. So websites don't always get you and you leave very quickly. In fact, the last data I saw from Google is you bounce out of websites in 2.5 seconds. We bounce out of your resume in 8 to 10. We're giving you 4 times the amount of information. Let's make sure you get in the yes pile. So do this analysis. What do they want? What do I have? What's that overlap? Cover that or resolve that in your cover letter. Now, resume, cover letter, and your interview. Now, one of the key places that you can do this on your resume, and I'm showing here a software developer position, and I just picked a random role, is in your profile section. So that's that top section in your resume that you would really hit them where it counts, and I don't mean figuratively, but you want to show that value immediately in that resume. So again, what they ask for, you're going to address those things. Now, here's where some of your monkeys are going to move in. Monkeys are the chitter chatter of doubt. Yes, but Marlene, they asked for this and I don't have that. Well, guess what? Everybody asks for more than what they can sometimes get. So here's a little guideline for you. 60%. If you have 60% of the requirements, you are likely going to be at least potentially competitive for that. Now at 60, you're not as competitive as if you have 80. The thing you don't know is how do they evaluate all of those particular things in the job ad? Maybe you don't have all of them, but you showcased your high potential because again, your narrative showed that. So that's one way, is writing your profile section powerfully. And I tried to showcase in this example of what they asked for and then how you would write it. There's another key point that I want to make sure in your resume is that you want to showcase those soft skills. So I wanted to pick a soft skill that we would all have no matter what job we're applying for. So here we have communication skills. I'm sure every one of you is being asked to provide communication skills, or that's a requirement. Now, I created a Wordle with all the different elements of communication, because when they write excellent verbal and written communication, what does that mean? And what element of communication? So what I'd like you to do now is in section or quadrant 2, in the targeted section, is just take a couple of seconds to reflect on what elements of communication might be needed for your next role. Is it presentation skills? Is it written communication? Is it writing reports? Is it that you're a general communicator? So when they ask for that, you might have to go deeper into understanding that role to understand what it is that they're asking for in terms of communication. Your next task, and let me ask you to write this down, is when and how have you demonstrated that communication in your past skills? So think about, just if you would take just quickly, because this is not a long session tonight, but when and how did you showcase that particular communication skill? So once again, we're doing a little bit of that pre-work to be crystal clear of what that employer might be asking for, so you can give them what they want, because that's targeting. So you want to be sure that you target your resume to that particular employer. And the next thing I want to say about this is that you want to avoid cliches. Now, this is where you're totally allowed to get a little bit grumpy, because they use cliches. They ask for excellent communication skills, but I don't want you to dare include a cliche in your resume. So I've provided you with a couple of examples, again, going from different range of roles for somebody who's quite seasoned to somebody who might be starting out their career. Once again, you have to look at the elements of that communication to understand what little nugget of it you're going to include. So that's a major rule within resumes, is targeting. And then within that is reading through that ad and really give them what they need. A lot of people aren't doing this. So that's what I want to be sure. So just wrapping that up before we get on to the next quadrant is that read that job ad. I find that some people will say to me, but I did write my resume and my cover letter to the job, and without seeing their stuff in every situation, but I found a number of times that I didn't think they did target. So just take that extra effort. The next golden rule of resumes, so the first was targeted, the second is accomplished. What I'd like you to do now is we're going to challenge yourself a little bit. So we're now in quadrant 3, is I'm going to grab my phone, because I'm going to use a timer on my phone to time you for a little activity. What I'd like you to do is write in quadrant 3 is I want you to brag for 60 seconds. I want you to write down in quadrant 3 what makes you awesome, something you've achieved and feel proud of, something that distinguishes you, something in your past role that you feel you really want to make clear in this next resume. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to do that. Don't overthink it. Just try and write really quickly. Go. Keep going. There's more. I hope you haven't run out of steam. 10 more seconds. There you go. Now, I normally do this little activity in my face-to-face workshops where I get you doing this with someone else. But I'm wondering how that activity made you feel. Usually I get a whole range of feelings, ranging from, oh, that was stressful. I couldn't think of anything. Oh my goodness, that was hard. And then I get the occasional person who said, only 1 minute. I got way more than that. The second phase of this activity, if we were face-to-face, is I would ask the person that you bragged to what it sounded like to them. And without fail, every workshop that I've ever done, and I've run probably 500 workshops, is that they say, it sounded very interesting. I wanted to know more. So this is where we have to manage ourselves, because we are feeling that, oh my goodness, I don't have this thing, and yet it's interesting to your audience. So let's look at how you would go about writing accomplishments. You want to be sure you're showcasing your value and your impact with evidence-based sentences. This will be the portion of your resume, the work experience, where you're going to build in some very strong sentences. They might sound like implemented a new operations management system for a newly relocated warehouse, resulting in $5 million savings over 5 years during a period of high growth. Or quadrupled website sessions in 1 year through a comprehensive website redesign that transformed from a standalone blog to a fully integrated consumer destination site. Or for you simple and straightforward communicators, double territory in 2 years. Double territory sales in 2 years. So build strong sentences. Now, how do you do that? Is that there's some key techniques to doing that. The first is that you begin with strong verbs. You may have heard this before as well, but be sure that your sentences start with very strong verbs. The second thing you want to do is make sure that there are numbers, metrics, value. And the higher the job you're going for, the more you have to do that, because we measure your performance by these things, of improving things. And how was that measured? How would you communicate that? So part of your homework, if you haven't done this, is start looking at your past jobs and looking at when you made a difference. When did you improve something? When did you save money? When did you make customers happy or clients happy? Did you implement something that made a difference? Did you resolve something that the organization has been struggling with? So all of these different ways are ways to put what I call muscle to your resume. It pops to your prospective employer, and this is a universal opinion of all prospective employers. So I say this with absolute confidence, targeting first, you get them, and then show them you are their person. And you do that with powerful business language. So learn how to start constructing those sentences if you haven't done so. And maybe you have to modify a couple, because back to the rule of targeting is that maybe a particular achievement, you've got several, of course, but maybe one over another one, you have to figure out, oh, maybe I include this one on this resume, but maybe not on that resume. So you have to customize your resume for each job you apply for. The last thing I want to talk about is the rule of pretty. So now we're in the rule number 4 of pretty, and I just said pretty because it's a cute little word to remember, but make your resume very inviting to read. I just chose one here. This is a particular sample that I've created working with students. Students have a lot of monkeys in their head. There are a lot of excitement about their new training, but they really struggle with how to sell themselves because they got all these monkeys about unrelated experience. And I say, manage those monkeys, because you are also dismissing other experience and thinking it's garbage. I see that so much. They look at related experience as golden and everything else as garbage. And you weren't born the day that you got the related experience or the related training. You brought in you're bringing in a whole bunch of other skills and abilities. Now, maybe the hard skills is something you had to retrain on or about to retrain on or going to learn as you get this next role. But the other skills are the hardest to train. You've probably heard that as well, but I'm going to reinforce that point. So in this particular example, I put education and training higher up for this particular stage of the career, and then technical projects, what they learned in the program, and then their work experience fell after that. Now, based on my audience tonight, I'm guessing that example is not relevant to you. You will be putting your experience high up and your education lower, but without knowing everybody's particular story. The point I want to make is that elements of your resume might be dynamic, and you want to be sure you hit them where it counts on that first page. whether you use a 1-page or a 2-page, and there's a lot of angst about that. And my view is, if you feel good about 1 page and you're selling yourself on 1 page, go for it. In the Lower Mainland area and Canada, I would say we are a 2-page environment. Once you start moving down into the US and particularly Silicon Valley, it is a 1-page environment. So that's why you might be getting mixed messages, because you might be getting of your 1.5 billion hits, is that you're getting your resume advice from Silicon Valley, very top notch, but relevant to their, I'll call it cultural environment of the high-tech environment, which is time is money, money, money. So we have no time for anything. So the same rules would apply. So you've got to really look at your resume. If you're underselling yourself in 1, start going on to 2. The next resumes that I'll show you would be examples of perhaps a more graphical style. And these are examples and samples from Canva, just one play space where you might look at some templates that might be useful for you. And now the one thing I'd say about Canva is I felt that some of their designs were quite lovely, but they had a lot with photos. And photos are a no-no in resumes. But if you want to do it, just know it's a no-no and you're kind of going against the common trend. I hate to have absolute rules like I'm your mother telling you what to do. I'd rather you to understand why that is. So that relates to potential discrimination, and we don't want to be discriminating against people. And I'm about to irritate you, because I'm going to tell you not to put a photo in your resume, but I'm going to tell you that you're 14 times more likely to be viewed within LinkedIn. So I would include it there, not on your resume, okay? I know you might be unhappy about that contradiction, but that's what I would suggest. The other thing I noticed about Canva is that Canva is I don't find that some of their sentences are as rich as I personally like to see. So just be mindful of some of the examples that I've provided to you tonight. And again, depending on your job level, really be clear about how strong and how long those sentences are. So you might at certain times of your career have shorter sentences, but not so short that they're under descriptive. The other thing I found about Canva designs, while they're quite lovely, they use a column format, and that means that they give a lot of space for some information and then squeezes your experience onto another part of the resume. And that might mean that your content looks very squeezed and tight. So that's one of those balancing acts that you'll have to do when you are sitting in front of the computer and looking at those particular designs. So just be mindful of that. Another thing that I've seen happen with resumes is that you got advice about writing resumes that may have been very good for the time of your life and the time of your career, but it may not be as relevant now for the person you are, for the job that you're applying for, and the level of role. So just be sure that you're realizing that you may have increased, you've hopefully been moving up, and that resume advice for a lower level position may not be as relevant for a higher level position. So you want to have lots of muscle as you're moving up, and you want to have those numbers to show those values. That's why I'm talking about evidence-based. Almost everyone I've worked with has been in very hard fields, technology, worked with a ton of people there, accounting and the other professions. I've worked with a ton of people there. I've worked with people, scientists, I've worked with PhDs, postdoc fellows, both in the academic environment as well as the corporate environment. And these are people who do not, they're anti like fluffy stuff. So you want to be sure that you're using really strong language and know your audience. So fluffy are words like excellent. I don't know what excellent means, and that's why it gets debated by people who are really, are more senior in the organization. They don't know what that means. So you've got to keep proving that value, again, creating that narrative. A couple of other things I want to point to is that I also see that people dismiss and devalue other activities and passion projects and so on. Make no mistake, I look through, this is my own opinion, and I find other recruiters feel, I look through the data, where you worked, what education, I look at those performance goals or outcomes that you have, but I also look at what you did in your off time. That tells me your true passions and tells me what you really care about. This is particularly important to include for organizations that are very, I'll call it, culturally oriented. They'll tell you their culture, they'll tell you what type of environment that they have created, and therefore they're looking for a certain kind of person. So they are going to look to those sections of your resume, interests, community involvements, professional affiliations, those round out the resume. Personally, I feel very strongly about them. And I think that they also tell a bit more of a story about you, creating that narrative. Particularly important for people who are career changing, because those maybe have been the stepping stones of things that start suggesting that you were so passionate that you did this on the side, that you did it in addition to your work, to going to school or whatever it was. So I wanted to highlight that we are looking at that whole story. I can't promise for every person who reads it. Remember, we're human too. So remember, HR people want to love you, not figuratively, but they want to welcome you in. We want great people. We want to get rid of those first batch of resumes, those that weren't really serious when they put it together. And we want to really focus on those people who look like they've taken the time. That pile is very small because of the rules that I've talked about. So they haven't been as targeted and they haven't been as accomplished. Again, we may be dismissing very, very good people, and don't be that story. So that would be some things that I would offer. So just to summarize, create a standout resume by showing that alignment, I get you, show impact, 3 ways. You target and speak to your audience, show you get them, and do some homework and make sure and showcase that extra homework. One of the places I didn't mention, and I would say you could also target, is in your cover letter. Probably that question's going to come up. I'll leave it to that, but it would be a fantastic place to show that extra homework. So rule number 1 is targeted. Rule number 2, or guideline number 2 of your strong resume or standout resume is make sure it's accomplished, showcase those achievements, those outcomes that you have achieved in your past role. And number 3 is pretty. So those hopefully give you some high level ideas. I know that I didn't want to go down into super niggly details. Some of those niggly details may come up in this Q&A section. So I will move it over to Joanne. Oh, and I have some resources for you. I didn't want to overload you with this. I've just given you a couple of online resources. SFU has curated some really nice items within their alumni section of their website. I believe it's their career alumni, sorry, for alumni, but you don't have to be alumni. These are available to everyone. Canva, I mentioned as having templates. So take a look at those. There are several free ones there. Monster still has some great career free advice, so scan that. And My Perfect Resume is a .com site that's trying to sell you resume styles and so on. They also have some great tips and free things, so do check that out. And if you're seeking service, if you're perhaps alumni of any of our post-secondary educational institutions in the Lower Mainland, please use them. They have phenomenal people working for them and some great services. You may be eligible. And no matter where you graduated, there might be alumni services for you. And Dress for Success for women, they provide some terrific, wonderful career services as well. So I hope that you feel more like this woman about your resume as a result of today. I'll move it back to Joanne so she can take it from here.
Thanks, Marlene. And we already got some questions in the queue, but before we go to our questions, we want to just remind you that our next installment of Wise Money Talks is coming up on Tuesday, February 22nd, and from 6 to 7:15, and we will be hearing Fiona Wilson speak. As a senior portfolio manager with Guardian Capital in Toronto, Fiona will share her perspective on what is happening in the markets today and how she is positioning investment portfolios. So please register soon. It is filling up quickly, and we hope to see you then. And now to your questions. All right. And
All right.
so the first question that we had, Marlene, was from someone who was just, it was a basic one, wondering what the third part of the forming powerful sentences was. I guess she missed it when you were speaking.
Oh, the third part. Oh, I think I'm unclear. I thought I did 3 rules.
Oh, maybe I'll ask her to come in later.
Yeah. So just refresh my memory because
All right.
I just don't recall. But the three golden rules. So there's a main message of aligned and impact, and then the 3 golden rules of targeted, accomplished, and pretty. So it might have been a sub point within there. I'm just kind of going blank.
Yeah, if you need more information, or if she needs more information, I hope she'll come back and ask him the question.
Okay.
All right. And next, from Sandy, she's wondering, what do you recommend to do for gaps in timing on your resume?
So it kind of depends how long it was and what it was. There's different opinions about that. My general thought is if it's under 6 months, don't worry about it. We're all doing other things. We're traveling. We're taking care of family. We are learning, although learning would be on your resume probably. We may have been ill. There's just a number of things. Longer than a year, I wouldn't necessarily address it in the resume, but I'd be prepared to talk about it in the interview.
Okay, that's great. And how far back should people go with their resumes?
So without again knowing the full story of the individual, I generally use a rule of 5 jobs or 10 years.
Okay, thank you. And then for another question is, how to communicate impact and value of soft skills that do not have a clear attached to it?
That's really a challenge because it's what all employers want and how is it measured? And it probably was measured in some way of acknowledgement. So somebody promoted you, acknowledged you, and it could be just a verbal thing. So in some of my resumes, I'll say recognized by senior manager for, and then I embed that set of soft skills there. You might be able to measure it and you haven't thought about it. So, for me, when I first started doing this work, I started, I've done a lot of workshops. Okay, so I put a number to those workshops, or I was recognized by staff for something. So I would really challenge that person to try and think through how that was received and how that might have been acknowledged.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I'm just looking at the chat, keeping track of the We also have that, given that so many organizations screen their applicants electronically, how can we get past the filters if we are at 60% of requirement zone? And how do we make our resumes pretty if they're all stripped down and into
So the number of organizations, I don't have the number, but I'm not convinced that it's as big as people think it is. So there's still a lot of human interaction going on. But let's just say this person's in high tech. So there are certain high tech firms, of course, that are using this. So Amazon would be using this. So you've got to embed those keywords. So you've got to, if they're, again, back to my, what do they want? What do I have? You're embedding those keywords and you're doing it in your profile, and you're including it in your work experience. So you have to, they're going to be searching for that. And they simply add those terms in to some software before they put in through all the resumes. But you'd be surprised, like large organizations, for example, UBC is not using that.
Oh,
So yeah, so I think people are thinking I just don't know the number, so I can't confidently give it to you, but I know for sure UBC and BCIT at this point are not. So your resume is received by a human and reviewed by a human. Probably government is looking at that. Anybody in their 20s or 30s should be learning how to do this, because AI is going to start being introduced at some point, artificial intelligence. We don't have it now. It's just machine learning right now, where they're looking for those patterns, but we'll start seeing that stuff. So you always got to be on your game here of what technology. For right now, you got to use those keywords, and that's just simply screening for the hard skills, the hard skills. Now on the pretty thing, yeah, it's not going to be pretty. So some organizations are taking that piece out of the equation. So they just want the data.
Right.
So you got to do your homework to know, who am I targeting? What's my field of work? What size of organization? Are they on the tech, up curve of recruitment? So this is not a one simple answer. You kind of have to do your due diligence.
And really pay attention to the job posting. And like you say, pull out all the key elements that they're looking.
Oh, this is where I'm telling people are not doing this.
Right.
And they think they are. And I've looked at their resume in some cases, and I've looked at the ad and I went, that's my tough HR hat. And, in some cases they're using very broad language for, thinking they get you or get that employer, and they're not.
Right.
You gotta, what is their pain vein? Find their pain vein and hit it. Show you are the solution. So you have to read up on, what is it? Why might that role exist? What problem is that role trying to solve? And I don't mean a negative problem. I mean a business problem. Why does it exist? You're offering your skills for pay. That's an economic exchange. So what is that economic exchange? Why is that role? And the more senior you go up, the more it's measured.
Perfect.
So yeah.
Thanks. Also, we did hear back from Annie, who asked that first question. And she mentioned that you said in the beginning that you started with the sentence around having stronger verbs.
Yes.
And then that was the last part of that.
Oh, okay. So the three, so there was strong verbs, numbers, and my third example, I'll go on my PowerPoint. It was the achievement, the outcome for what you've done. So showing that verb, importing some numbers to show value, and then what was the outcome to your effort. So I did this thing, verb, task, result. Okay. I did this thing, here's what I did it to, and here's the outcome.
Great, thank you. And also,
so hopefully that answers it.
On YouTube, so people can always refer back to, but I really appreciate you taking the time to, Annie taking the time to ask the question again. She says, thank you.
Great.
Now from Nadine, she's wondering, how important are the LinkedIn elements, like skills and endorsement and recommendations? If your resume makes it through screening, do employers really look for these things on LinkedIn as a tool to further?
Yes. So I'll make that answer and I can't speak to every person who is in this role, right? We're all individuals as well, doing our own following our own approach. But part of branding, so we're just here on resumes because we only had a short amount of time, but I'm also, as part of your brand, as soon as I see maybe a resume that speaks to me, I'm going to also read the cover letter, and I am going to look at your LinkedIn. So I'm HR, those are the things I'm going to look to first. Let's say you're a software developer. You're probably somebody's going to go on GitHub right away and start looking at your code and where you've contributed in that environment. So what spaces and what places are you contributing? LinkedIn would be like the add-on to your resume. So I'm going to also cross-check, what did you put in your resume? What did you put in your LinkedIn? How do those connect? LinkedIn allows you to provide a bigger picture about you. Because the resume is only 1 to 2 pages, of course you're more than 1 to 2 pages. Hello. How do we tell more? So those skills and endorsements, I kind of look at them. What I would look at more are recommendations and who wrote them and what did they say.
Okay, that's really good to know, actually. We also have a question around sending resumes online seems like such a black hole. Any recommendations on how to avoid this?
I would, so depends how much of a Sherlock Holmes they want to be, and it's not stalking, because I've also had some kind of interesting behaviors. So you want to be kind of figuring out who's who that potentially you could follow up. So if you're doing your due diligence, you might be able to figure out who it is, and with the most respectful. So this is where things go sideways as well, because I have found that the way people word some things, I know with my compassionate hat on, I know they're stressed or worried and never got training on how to have a good communication around this, but they are almost aggressive about it. So it's watching your wording. So following up, networking is super important. I know we're in this new world, but we'll eventually get out of it. People do want to network. They want to know their community and their professional community. We will be back to that. How it looks, I don't know. And that also is a great way to start connecting. Hey, do you know Joanne, for example? I've heard about this role. I'm so excited about it. I really would like. So you got to kind of be a bit of a Sherlock Holmes and then watch your interaction with that person. I'm following up and I'm just wondering what's happening. Not great.
It is a small world after all.
It is.
Yeah. All right. We have from Pam. It can be very challenging to provide quantitative facts in the accomplishments section when we work as teams or our impact on the organization is indirect. How do you handle this?
I'm pretty sure your supervisor, boss, director, or whoever it is has some metrics on this stuff. I'd be going back to look at any documentation. And if I didn't know, I'd go to my boss to say, how are we measuring this thing? You know, because you're measured for everything. You wouldn't be in that role because they can't justify that many thousands and thousands of dollars for you without having a justification. And if you can't get it from them, I know everyone's intelligent. They could start doing some measurement to it. Like, how many people did I see? How many things did I produce? How would I measure myself on this? How would I know I did a good job? Because you want to go home at night feeling like I didn't waste my day and waste my time. So yeah, I know it's challenging. I didn't mean for it to be easy. If it was so easy, we wouldn't need this workshop. So you might have to sit with that a little bit.
Well, it actually,
and look at other examples of resumes of people who might have done this. That might give you some really clear sentences.
And with the bulk of the people on this call being people who are in current jobs thinking about what's next, it's a good reminder, start taking notes and start paying attention to what your impact is now.
It's true, because we sometimes see the perfect job. What I found is nobody finds the perfect job at the right moment they want it. It's either before or after. So if it's before, it's like, I don't have my resume ready. And now you're trying to remember all these 3 rules and if it's after, you're a little like frustrated because your energy, you were hoping it was going to come. And so I'm really a person who says, keep this stuff fresh, you know, because the world is dynamic. The most perfect job may appear and you might get a phone call, you know, about an opportunity. So make sure that you're appropriately looking for work and managing that process.
Great, thank you. And now we have a question from Anastasia. Do you have any recommendations on resources for developing your interview skills?
I'd have to, I mean, I've got it all up here. I would go back to, you know, I would start looking at the Monster, and particularly I'd look at my alumni of the school I went to, because they are so motivated to provide quality resources. So even if you don't have an alumni, look at UBC, BCIT, Kwantlen, Langara. We have amazing educational institutions in the Lower Mainland. See what free resources that they have, and I'd be looking at them. And I know for sure SFU in that link I provided to you today had some element of interview skills.
Right. It's a really good reminder, actually, of the resources that are out there that we sometimes forget about. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for that. And from Anne, she's wondering, should she put her address on her resume or just the city? That's a really good question.
Okay, so I would generally suggest at this point not to include your street address. Maybe because my husband is in IT security, I'm like super duper like privacy person. And so as long as an employer knows what location you're in, that you're not applying from France. I did receive a resume from France, which was fine. This is years ago when we expected people to be in the workplace or in the environment. So, and the question I would also say is make sure you're applying to roles that you are willing to commute to, because I've had numerous interviews end because I asked in the screening, have you done the homework of where we're located and are you willing to make that commute? So maybe in this new environment, employers are not expecting you to come in. I'm noticing that they're doing a really good job for some, that right in the job title, they're saying remote, 100% remote, or hybrid remote and on location. So I would only include my city, province, not street, and I would be sure I'm only applying to jobs I'd be willing to commute to if it's a hybrid model or on location.
Times have changed. We have another question coming in about someone who's self-employed and wondering, she's wondering if I should put my resume, what should I put on my resume, or what is the best way to do my resume as a self-employed person?
Okay, so I guess I'm unclear what the resume would be used for, because I'm self-employed and I have used it to bid on projects. So I guess it goes back to targeting, as who is your target market, what purpose are you using? So if it's a resume that they're trying to use to get employment and they're worried about their self-employment status, I would write up everything just as clearly and strongly as I've suggested, but I would actually be ready for that question in the interview, because it would be a very natural question. Why are you closing shop? And that's a very, very okay thing. I've worked with so many people who flirted and dated with self-employment and found it not for me, and said, I got to get out of this. And it's really, that is not a negative at all.
Great. Okay, thank you. And now we have from Bettina. She doesn't have an account on LinkedIn and doesn't plan to have one in the future. Is that a disadvantage in your opinion?
If you were a software developer, yeah. So it depends on your role, but I'm going to say no, assuming that she's not in high tech. I'll use it kind of broad.
Okay.
I hope that answers her question, but I'm going to say, why would I turn down a great candidate? So that's why I'm saying we get rid of all of the individuals who look like they weren't serious about applying. You know, I make the joke, did you apply at midnight in your pajamas? Because it looked like you just pushed send and a random format and you didn't read anything about the company. Done. But as soon as I've got those folks remaining, I'm rereading, circling, thinking, comparing, going on LinkedIn.
Right. Okay.
If it exists. If not, I'm gonna still have that resume in my hand.
Okay. And then we have another question that I think you've sort of addressed, but again, just wondering, what tips do you have for creating a resume to get past the applicant tracking systems?
Well, again, it's the targeting rule. Are you really speaking to their needs? And so you're going to have to use key terms. I'm going to assume this person might be in high tech. And again, is the company using that technology? So if they are confident they are, then they have to build in those key terms. So like they're embedding, let's say you needed React, and that's a technical skill. They're building React right into that search functionality so that you're screened for React. So make sure React is in your technical skills or whatever. So it's the same rule. It's just, it gets a little bit worrying because you see, oh, a human didn't pass me. Well, at least I could be mad at the person. Now I could be mad at a machine, but there's a human behind the machine. So you can still be mad at the human.
Right. So it comes back again, do your homework, know, what
I'm telling you, I am so, if people don't get this, they have missed my main point. People are not targeting.
Right. Yeah, it's a really good reminder. The next question is a bit long, so bear with me.
All right.
It's from Nadine, and she's wondering if you are lacking a degree or work experience in a particular area that is important for a job, but have managed to accomplish a course or two a year as a working parent in that area, is it useful to list coursework in that area in the education section of the resume? Like
I would.
Yeah, lacking an MBA, but have taken various UBC.
Absolutely. Your job is to flaunt, and I don't really mean that, but I mean, is to showcase everything. So what do they want? What do I have? That's what I'm trying to make sure you're crystal clear about. That analysis, what I'm trying to get you to really understand is you're giving up, you're being too light before, you're looking at yourself too closely before you've done your analysis, and you're too almost emotional about it.
Right.
So I want you to forget you when you do that first phase of the analysis. What do they want? And distance yourself, because all the monkeys are already, oh, I don't have that. I don't have that. Right. And I see two things that happen. Candidates who don't put their hat in the ring, and I don't even see them. And I'll pull gender in for this one scenario, is women have to feel like they have to have most things. And that's still true today, because I work with all age groups. And I'll ask my younger students, and I see that gender divide still happening, that women are not putting in their resume until they have everything. So that's why I'm giving you the 60%. The guys are throwing in their hat in the ring like, I only have 30%, but why not? So learn from the guys on this. They're saying, why not? So write it up strongly, write it up in business-like terms, show you get them, and you'll be far ahead. That's why I'm saying 60%, because we may not get everything, and we may get, we are looking at your potential. So there might be something embedded in there that showcases potential. If you've been learning on your own and your own initiative while you've been trying to work, that's not easy. So that indicates to be a soft skill or a trait. Right. I personally would notice that.
Okay. And what about if somebody has unrelated experience? Should they be including it in their resume?
So I'm going to generally say yes, but it kind of depends how long, what it was, how long ago, what the additional skills were. But overall, I advocate yes, because embedded in potentially that other role was some other related skills or transferable skills. So they first evaluate, can you do the job? So do you have the hard skills, the functional skills? So that might be your particular training or particular experience that you got because of the training doing the job. So those are the, I call hard skills. But supposedly we can train for those. What's harder to train for are all those soft skills and the attitude and I call it the chutzpah, the fire. Showcase fire, showcase, you've got that willing attitude. You can't make that happen. You have it or you don't.
Okay. And what about, like, how does somebody showcase their strengths, and when they're actually changing a career and their relevance?
So they have to really do that analysis of what do they want? What do I have? And hopefully they've started that bridge building between their past to this new role, and they have to showcase that somehow. So that may have been some training, like the previous question. I've taken this, and as a result of the training, so here's another thing I feel really strongly about. Now I got my tough HR hat on, is don't show me your course, like list your education, but show me what you know because I've stood in front of 3,000 students and I know not every one of them is paying attention to me. So they attended the course, but did they gain the knowledge? So you go to school to gain the knowledge. So in your profile, show that knowledge.
That's so much good information, Marlene. It's just like, I'm taking notes. Somebody's new to Canada. Like, how are they adapting their resume to the Canadian market?
Right. Great question. And I work with this story all the time. So I feel quite strongly and passionately about it. So first of all, don't not include your education. So I see people have been told, don't include your education from your home. And I say, what? You worked hard for that. So I advocate including your education from your home, because nobody can take away your education. Now, you may have to start building some bridge of taking some part-time work or maybe slightly unrelated work, and maybe a course or two, Coursera. I don't, again, don't know people's time, energy, budget, etc. But education and a different type of job here all comes together to tell the story. So I can tell in 3 seconds that someone's new to Canada, they're making this tremendous change in their life. They have high potential. Let's absolutely consider them, right? Depending on how they wrote their resume. But there would be some, I would say, a group who might miss that targeting rule. And where I've seen, and this applies to everyone, is they've over listened to their friends for career and resume advice. And it's not good. So 1.5 billion hits on Google of resume advice, and I'm still seeing, I should see 100% perfect resumes if there's that much information. So people are still not hitting the mark. And it's probably because they got promised some golden rule from someone else. Make it short. That's another one I get. Make it short. And so they make it so short, it says nothing. It's flat. So just be mindful of what you're throwing out. I would not throw out past education. I would include my past experience depending how far you go. But so 5 years, 5 jobs, 10 years. And start thinking about how you're Canadianizing your story to start bringing those two things together.
Right. Thank you. And last question, your favorite and mine, to cover letter or not to cover letter, Marlene?
Okay. All right. So my view is, I'll try and be as perfectly clear as possible. This is confusing. Most employers are not asking for them, but want them. So if it's not stated, include a cover letter. Okay, so but do it well. So a slight new trend I'm seeing is some employers are saying no cover letter. And my guess is because they have been so poorly written. And so they don't want to go through like, this is a waste of time, a waste of piece of paper. But I believe it's a deal breaker if you do it right, if you do it well. So hone your cover letter writing skills, which needs to show your value and why you want the job, why you want to work for them. Almost no one does that. And that's a deal breaker. As soon as I see that, and with only 60%, and I see that passion, you are going potentially into my yes pile because you did your homework. You have passion. You learned about me and my business problem. Now you're resonating at a much higher level.
Perfect. That's a really good answer. Very much appreciated. Thanks, Marlene. Just so much great information and like there's so many practical elements that we can all, take all those notes and hold back onto. But, especially for me, I resonated with, when you talked about show your value and impact and create your own narrative. And also do your homework. Those are all really key points that I think, as well as many more that we've taken from your session.
Great.
I also wanted to thank everyone who joined us today. We appreciate you asking such great questions and participating in our initial poll. We are sure that after today's presentation, you will know what you need to do to tweak your own resume with confidence and take that next step for your own career. And if not, you can always come back to the video and go through it. I think I'm going to be going through it a few times. When you end your session today, you'll be prompted to complete a quick survey. And as I mentioned, it's just less than a minute long. And this really helps us to design upcoming webinars and ensure that we continue to deliver value to our Wise Money Talks registrants. We also invite you to visit our website at sophiawealthacademy.com to learn about other upcoming webinars, events, as well as financial management resources, tools such as our blog, the online e-course, a podcast, books, and so much more. There's really a lot of information that we're really trying to support you through that process. We'll also be including a blog about the various webinars that are coming up this year, and that will also be available on the website in the next few weeks. As a reminder, you will be receiving an email later this week with a link to this talk. Please feel free to share this webinar, as well as those that are coming up with any friends or family who might be interested. And we just really wanted to thank you again and hope you have a great night.